We all know great leaders who were both skilled at getting people to follow them and then who used that following for good. A couple of simple examples that we would all know are St. Mother Teresa of Calcutta and Pope John Paul II. We also know leaders, though, that were skilled at getting people to follow them and turned around and used their following for evil. Two examples of that would be Adolf Hitler and Joseph Stalin. This distinction between one's abilities and the way we use it is critical to understanding this very tricky parable in today's gospel. Neither Jesus nor the master in the story were praising the shrewd steward's acts of dishonesty. The steward was stealing from the master before he got fired and continued to steal from him afterwards. Nothing about that is good or worthy or praiseworthy or right. But he did show some impressive capabilities in dealing with this situation. Those capabilities are what Jesus and the master in the parable are praising. Consider three. First, he took the long view. He didn't sit around and go, oh, I'm going to be out of office in a few days. Let's throw a party, eat, drink, and be merry, enjoy it while it lasts. He looked out to the long view and says, I'm going to either be begging or doing manual labor. And it was the long view that informed his actions in the moment. Jesus is encouraging us to take the long view, to not get swept up in the things of this world, to just eat, drink, and be merry, but to be driven by our ultimate desire to be with God. Secondly, the shrewd steward used everything that was available to him to deal with this situation before it was taken away. He forgave portions of his master's promissory notes to ingratiate himself to others before he no longer had the authority to do so. Jesus is encouraging us to do the same. What do you suppose he meant by the statement, I tell you, make friends for yourselves with dishonest wealth, so that when it fails, you will be welcomed into eternal dwellings? Was Jesus encouraging us to steal or to acquire things dishonestly and then give them away like some kind of Robin Hood? No, he was merely pointing out that everything we have is dishonest wealth. It simply doesn't belong to us. Our money, our families, our jobs, our reputations are not actually ours. We had none of it when we arrived on the planet, and we will take exactly none of it when we leave. We are simply stewards of the great gift that God has put in our charge while we're here. And we are to use these gifts wisely so that when it fails, when we die, we will be welcomed into eternal dwellings. Lastly, the shrewd steward took action. He didn't wait around and think about his plan or say, I'll do that when I have time. He called up the master's debtors immediately and one by one made it happen. Jesus is calling us to be equally action-oriented. Not to say I really should or I plan to someday, but to actively use all that is available to us without delay. These three traits of focusing on the long view, using what is available to us as stewards, not as owners, and taking action are powerful and important skills. The shrewd steward used them effectively but unjustly. We, as children of the light, are called to use those same skills for good. Today, I invite us each to consider how we can use our time, talent, treasure, and voice in a very specific way to be a stand for good in a world that has many ideas about what good looks like, a world that will mock us and cancel us if it disagrees with us. This November, all Californians will be asked if we want to add 37 words to our state constitution by approving Proposition 1. This amendment extends abortion access in our state. But before I go there, let me first address a few common questions. First, is it appropriate for a Catholic homilist to use the ambo during Mass to address this issue? The answer, yes. While he should never address purely political issues, ever refer to specific candidates or political parties, or in any way communicate a partisan preference, he does have an obligation to address important moral issues. Second, are my comments today simply my, Deacon Mark's, personal opinion? No, Bishop Van and all of his brother bishops throughout the state of California have specifically requested that clergy make every attempt to inform and unite Catholics on this issue during our preaching. And lastly, it is not my intent to overlook or dismiss the many injustices that women face in our society, nor to judge anyone who may have a history with abortion. There are many social factors that create a sense of fear, vulnerability, and abandonment for women, resulting in them sometimes feeling like they have no other option. Jesus' cross heals all, and his forgiveness is available to all who seek it. Mercy triumphs over judgment. With that background, here is the situation we find ourselves in. As you know, the recent U.S. Supreme Court decision of Dobbs that overturned Roe v. Wade did not make abortion illegal in the United States. It simply stated that the U.S. Constitution contains no explicit right to have an abortion, turning that decision over to the states. Some states have responded by tightening their restrictions, and others have expanded abortion access. California's current laws, without Proposition 1, allow for an abortion for any reason prior to the baby's viability, generally considered about 24 weeks of pregnancy and dropping over time, and past that time if the mother's life or health are in danger. While proponents of Prop 1 say that this measure only codifies the current law into the Constitution, Proposition 1 specifically removes the words, quote, prior to the viability of the fetus, unquote, enshrining in our state constitution the right to abort a baby just minutes before his or her birth. If Proposition 1 fails, nothing changes from our current law. It will still be legal in California to have an abortion for any reason up to 24 weeks or viability, and thereafter if the woman's life or health are in danger. That is the landscape we face. As Californians, we will live in a state that after November will either, one, allow certain abortions under certain circumstances, or two, guarantees the right to any abortion at any time for any reason to both Californians and anyone visiting our state. Neither choice is optimal, but the status quo is clearly better than a move in this direction. And this is why all of our bishops throughout the state have unanimously opposed it. You should also know that completely independent of Prop 1, our state legislators have vowed to make California an abortion sanctuary. They are preparing for this legally by proposing 20 bills expanding abortion access, and financially by allocating $200 million in the state budget to pay for abortions for women in California and those seeking them from out of state. Proposition 1 is, of course, being presented as a woman's rights issue. And who am I as a man to have an opinion or the right to tell a woman what to do with her body? The truth is, we don't have a right to tell somebody else to do what to do with their own body. But we do have laws that protect children. Nobody has the right to harm a 5-year-old or a 1-year-old or a 2-week-old. For any reason, this young boy or girl is protected, and we don't consider such protections a violation of their parents' or anybody else's rights. So what is the difference between a child 5 minutes before his or her birth versus 5 minutes after? What additional humanity did they gain in that 10 minutes that made them entitled to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? There is no logical, rational, political, or spiritual distinction between a child who is moments from birth and one who has already passed through the birth canal. This is the bridge too far that we hope will make all Californians reject this proposition. However, we cannot rely on that. We, as a society, have dehumanized preborn children for some time. We have called them fetuses, embryos, and even tissue. We have determined their worthiness to live based on their age, their residency in the womb, and their level of dependence on another person. It is only through this deep humanization programming that we might even consider this type of proposition on our ballot. But we as humans are not strangers to treating others of our species as non-humans. Dalits in India were considered untouchables. Jews in Nazi Germany were specifically referred to as subhumans. And people of color in the United States in 1857 were not included in the definition of citizen, according to our own Supreme Court. I will never know if I would have had the courage to stand up for any of these groups of people in any of these times and places. Would I, for example, have stood at an ambo in 1858 in the Deep South, challenged the highest court in the land, bucked the wave of overwhelming public opinion, and risked losing everything to say unequivocally that our black brothers and sisters are in fact human, fully human, and deserve all the rights of citizenship that the rest of us enjoy? That is a question that will never get answered. But I do know that in 2022, in a state with the most permissive abortion laws in the Union, I am obliged to state definitively that these babies are fully human, that they, like each of us, were endowed by their Creator with the rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Until we recognize that human life exists in a preborn child, we run the risk of continuing yet another of our great human tragedies. We can say for another day whether life begins at conception, the presence of brain waves or a heartbeat, viability outside the womb, or some other criteria. But I hope that for the purposes of this proposition, we can certainly agree today that human life, full and complete human life, is present in a child at full term. Like the shrewd steward, we must take the long view. 50 years from now, when medical technology has confirmed beyond doubt how human life is fully formed in the womb, will there be any question about which side of this argument we would have wanted to be on? Like the shrewd steward, we must use the resources available to us to make a difference. Our time, our talent, our treasures, our voice, our reputation, to stand up and say no. We do not have to hate or judge or condemn in this conversation. Most people that I know who are pro-choice are good people who want to be compassionate to pregnant women who find themselves in difficult life situations, sometimes as voiceless victims themselves. So this does not have to be a yelling match about what we are against. This is a loving match about what we are for. Life, fully dignified human life for mom and baby. And like the shrewd steward, we are called to take action. Page 9 of the bulletin encourages you to educate yourself and others about this issue, to pray with us, to exercise your citizens' right to vote, and to love by supporting women with challenging pregnancies through optionsunited.com, an organization that connects women in these difficult situations with free medical care, housing, and other needed services. Options United is collectively supported by all 12 dioceses in our great state. Let us stand together with all of our gifts, with our bold and loving voice, willing to step out of our comfort zone and help women who find themselves in difficult pregnancies, and to protect our children. For as children of the light, we are called to love them both.